Hey guys, we are live here. Welcome to the Bags to Riches podcast. I'm Zach Ginn, your host. I quitted my minimum wage bag boy job to pursue the riches of real estate investing at the age of 17 and never looked back. I'm here to educate and inform entrepreneurs, young and old, how to become complete real estate investors by talking to the best and most influential minds of real estate. I'm joined by the man, the commercial real estate king, Tim Bratz. Tim Bratz has over 3,950 units and over $336 million in assets under management, and he is on a mission to make it into $1 billion. Thanks for coming on today, Tim.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
All right. So let's get the cliche thing out of the way. I want to know your story on how you got into real estate investing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going through college, 03 to 07, when the market was going crazy. Everybody's making money in real estate, and that's what motivated me back then. So I wanted this allure of passive income and residual income really got me excited. And so I thought you got involved in real estate by becoming an agent. So after college, I moved out to New York City. My brother was living out there. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally. And so moved out to New York City, and I became a real estate agent, but on the commercial side. So instead of leasing apartments or houses, or selling houses, I was leasing retail space and office space for businesses. And so I'd represent either the business trying to find them another location, or I'd represent the landlord trying to bring a business in. And it was really, really interesting. I learned a lot about the investment side from there. So the first deal I ever closed took me about 8 months after I got started. So I didn't close it until, January, February of 2008. And from there, man, I was a 400 square foot space. We leased it for $10,000 a month with a 4% annual increase. And it was a 12-year lease term. So you do the math on that, and all of a sudden you see the landlord's making almost $2 million over the next 12 years for doing something at one point in time. And I was like, oh man, like I'm on the wrong side of the coin. I need to be owning real estate instead of brokering real estate. So I packed up my stuff, decided to move down south. I wanted to just higher, better quality of life. And so I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and it's 2008-ish. And, went through that whole analysis paralysis phase, trying to learn everything, and quickly realized I wasn't going to learn how to swim by reading about swimming in a book. I needed to actually jump in the water, kind of a thing. And so I decided to just buy a house. I found the cheapest house in the entire MLS, and didn't have money. Nobody's going to give me money. It was the worst housing recession anybody's ever been through. I'm a punk 23-year-old kid, and I never done a deal. So I called my credit card company, asked them to increase my limit. They gave me a credit card limit increase of $15,000. So I found the cheapest house on the entire MLS, and I bought it with a balance transfer check on my credit card. So physically did all the work, was watching YouTube videos and stuff on how to change out carpet and light fixtures and all that kind of stuff. And this thing was an absolute pig, and I just put a bunch of lipstick on it, and I ended up selling it. One of the neighbors wanted it. They bought it for about $14,000 more than what I was into it for. So in about 120 days, I made 14 grand, and without knowing anything that I was doing, in the worst housing recession ever. And so I was hooked. Wanted to go do it again. And, I got involved in like the wholesaling side of things and flipping side of things. And then all of a sudden you meet people who have money, but maybe don't have the time or the expertise to do real estate investing, and started partnering up with them. They put up the money. I did the work, and we ended up splitting it up, equitably. And so did a bunch of those, some joint venture partnerships and stuff, and gave up a lot of equity in the first couple hundred deals that I did, just because I knew I needed to build a resume. I knew I needed to kind of get those deals under my belt, and it would set me up for something greater, longer term. And I think it's one of my things that I've always done. I've always, sacrificed short term for the long term gain. And obviously it's worked out so far. So.
All right, cool. So when did you really make that transition from, would I consider that one South Carolina like a wholesale into real commercial investing? Because it seems like a huge jump.
Yeah, I think a lot of people build it up to be a big thing in their head, jumping into commercial real estate, especially when you come from the residential world. For several years, I just did residential. And in 2000, it was right around Christmas of 2012, I bought my first 8-unit building. I had some small multifamily, like a triplex and a couple duplexes. And that kind of stuff. But I bought my first apartment building, an 8-unit building in Cleveland, Ohio. So I moved back to Cleveland in 2012, fall of 2012, and had some guys approach me and say, "Hey, I got a little bit of cash I want to put in play." And yeah, so ended up buying an 8-unit apartment building, bought another 8-unit a few months later. And I was still flipping houses at the time and still doing some high-end flips, low-end flips, buying single-family rentals, and just kind of figuring things out. And so in 2013, at the end of 2013, I just kind of sat back and I looked at the business and where it was like, I just liked the idea of flipping rental properties because if it didn't sell, I didn't care because I had good cash flow coming in. So it covered all the operating expenses and the holding costs and all that kind of stuff. And so if it sold, great. I got just as much of a pop as I did when I was flipping houses, but I didn't have the stress on my shoulders about, having a non-performing property sitting there on the market waiting for some emotional buyer to come in, and the wife doesn't like the tile that's in the bathroom, and all of a sudden they walk away from the entire deal. Like I couldn't stand that. I like the predictability. I like the scalability. I like the just the that it was numbers and not emotions. I love the non-emotional aspect of commercial real estate because it's all about the numbers and running that down. So for me, I sat back after that first year and decided I like flipping rental properties and I like the scale of apartments. I like to go into one unit or one location versus 8 locations. I like looking at one roof versus 8 roofs, one foundation versus 8 foundations, negotiating with one seller versus 8 sellers, getting money on one deal versus 8 deals, right? And so there's scale in that. And that's what I ended up doing. So I sold off all the other stuff, all the single family, all the flips I was doing, and I just started doing apartments. So bought 23 units, bought a 31 unit, I kept on just, scaling up and doing some 1031 exchanges and rolling it forward. And then the partnership that I had with a couple of guys that brought that money initially ended up kind of going bad. And so we decided to liquidate everything in 2015, 2016, and just kind of did my own thing thereafter. So I ended up getting back into like turnkey flips.
Okay.
I needed to put some money on the table or put some food on the table. So make some money and started doing some turnkey flips, built up a big management company and started buying some apartment buildings again myself. And then in like 2017, I want to say, just looking at like, I was flipping 100 houses a year. We were doing some pretty decent stuff. I had one of the largest residential management companies in Greater Cleveland. And then I had a couple hundred apartments built up and I sat back on vacation in like summer of 2017, just realized like 90% of my net worth came from my apartments, but it was only 10% of my time. And I was like, let's just pivot the team, stop flipping houses and start really just diving into building wealth. And that's what we ended up doing. And so over the next 2.5 years, I had a few hundred units, I don't know, probably 500-600 units or something at that time, I'd say in 2017. And, was able to scale it up, like what you focus on expands. And we have a dialed in business model and a dialed in way to mitigate risk. And financing was cheap. And we just kind of kept on having conversations with private money lenders, kept on sourcing good deals, kept on putting good operations in place. And now we're up to just shy of 4,000 units.
Wow. So who do you say your early mentors were when it came to commercial then?
I didn't have any, man. I had business mentors, but I went through the school of hard knocks. I just kept on getting the crotch over and over and over and over again. And just, what else was I going to do? I've only ever done real estate. Like, what am I going to do? Quit? Like, I don't have any other skill sets. All I know is real estate. And so I didn't have a fallback plan. I couldn't retreat to the boats. The ships have already burned.
Yeah.
The only thing that I could do is make it work or fail miserably and die or something, right? Start all over again in some other industry. So for me, I just had to keep on rolling with the punches. Rocky says it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit. Keep moving forward. So I always had that mentality, like I know this is going to work. I just don't know when. And I just kept on moving forward with it. And so, I had a great business mentor, my good buddy, Mark Evans, one of my best friends today, has been a massive influence as far as like going from solopreneur to actually building out a team. And that's been huge. And definitely in thinking bigger also and helping me really expand my thought processes and say, hey, if I'm going to spend the same amount of time doing this one, why not just do a 100-unit building instead? But as far as like figuring out the logistics and mechanics of buying apartments, I just organically grew. I never took a class, never went to a course, never read a book on it. I just kind of organically grew from an 8 unit, rolled with the punches, bought another 8 unit, 23, 31, an 80 unit. And then it just kept on scaling up from there and got into multiple 100-unit complexes.
Wow. So yeah, big shout out to Mark Evans. He was actually our first guest on this podcast. So that was pretty cool. But I love talking to, people who are his mentees. They definitely they do a lot of things very similar. They're a lot of data guys, data driven, give me the numbers. And that's something I see from you and the way you talk about commercial. I think it's really important. I mean, would you consider what you're doing is the regular old like syndication model in commercial?
No, mine's very different.
Okay.
Okay. And I will say, although I do pay attention to the numbers, I have a COO that really dives into the numbers.
Okay.
And so I'm more like, I'm not really the data analytical guy. I'm more the sales marketing kind of guy, right? Mm-hmm. So I will say that you don't have to be totally data driven in order to get into multifamily or commercial real estate, but you need somebody on your team who is. And then fortunately I have those people in place. But as far as my syndication model, no, traditional syndication just never made sense to me. I don't like traditional syndication. I don't like that people buy a $10 million building for $10 million. I'm an investor. Like I'm looking for a deal, right? Like why would I pay retail price? So I didn't like that aspect. I also didn't like that the investors only get paid if the property performs. Yes. I don't like that the operator takes fees off the table regardless of the property's performance. I don't like that the operator does all the work and only gets 20 or 30% of the ownership of the equity. It makes no sense to me, right? And the whole traditional syndication makes sense if you're buying a skyscraper for $300 million and you got a single equity investor coming in, stroking a check for $60 or $75 million, and there's already third-party management in place, and it's easy, and it's in good shape, and they don't need their money back for 10 or 15 years. And you can take some fees off the table, and then 85% of the money goes to the equity investors, and you own 15% of a $300 million building. I would do traditional syndication in that regard. In every other instance, there's no chance I would ever do traditional syndication. That makes no sense to me. You're just not in the same boat, rowing in the same direction with your investors, and you're not buying good deals. And you're going to see it over the course of the next 24 months, especially with all this, coronavirus stuff that's been going on. It's obviously put a kink in the chain of what's been happening economically. And so a lot of people were paying retail price for apartment buildings, and then they were speculating that the prices would go up by 5% every single year for the next 5 years, and then they're going to refinance. That's like buying at the peak in 2006 and trying to sell at a premium in 2011. There's no way in hell it's going to happen. Yeah. And so, and they're paying retail price in 2000, right? And so they're paying retail price the past couple of years. And now that the market's shifted, now the interest rates are going to go up, cap rates are going to go up, which means valuations are going to come down. These people are going to get hosed over the next 5 years. And so there's going to be a massive opportunity for people who are poised like you and me to go in and buy a whole bunch of these buildings for a fraction of what they last sold for. And so, my business model is hinged on a couple things. Number one, always buy at a wholesale price. If you're always buying at a wholesale price, I took this from the single family. When I was flipping houses, I'd have to be all in, purchase price, renovation cost, holding cost for 65% of the after repair value. So that means when I got into apartments, I was like, all right, the model works in single family. Why wouldn't it work here? But instead of selling the property, I just refinance. So I'm all in for 65 cents. So $6.5 million on a building that's worth $10 million. But instead of selling it, I just get a new loan for 70% LTV. So $7 million. That allows me to pay off my short-term bridge loan. It allows me to pay back my equity investors, and it allows me to hold an asset long-term without any money in play anymore. All of our chips are off the table, right? We have a non-recourse loan in place for the next 10, 15 years, and we can just kind of let our tenants continue paying rent, covering operating expenses, paying down our mortgage every single month, and letting the property appreciate for the next 10 years. When all your investors' money's off the table, you could ride out any sort of storm, And so that's what we've been doing. So we always buy at a wholesale price. Instead of hoping and speculating for appreciation, we create it by doing value add. We put sweat equity into these properties. So we renovate the hell out of them on the front end. And then, and because we can force that appreciation in a fairly short amount of time, 12 to 24 months on average, we're able to turn around and refinance out our investors fairly quickly in 18 months on average. So now, again, all of our investors' capital's off the table. They had a good return while their money was in place, and they keep a little piece of equity in perpetuity. Usually 20, 25% ownership goes to the equity investors forever. So it might not look like it's as congruent. It's actually really hard to have this conversation with somebody who's familiar with traditional syndication and passively investing in those. And they're like, I can get 80% over here versus 25% or 20% in your deal, Tim. Yeah. Well, 80% of a $10 million building that owes $10 million is worth how much? It's a goose egg. It's not worth anything. Versus 20% in my deal, 20% of $3.5 million it's $700 and some $1,000, right? So just doing a single deal, and your money's stuck over here in traditional syndication for 5 to 10 years. I have velocity on my investors' capital, right? So I'm able to roll their money forward every 18 months, and over the same 5 to 10 years, instead of getting in 1 or maybe 2 deals in traditional syndication, they can get into 6 or 7 different deals with me, and they get all their money back, and they had a fixed return, and they still have equity in all those in perpetuity and can build some long-term wealth. Traditional syndication, in order to get their money back, they got to sell the property. So that's a high level, differences between my syndication model and traditional syndication.
Definitely. I mean, I'm already seeing the effects now of traditional syndicators. I hate to, attack other people, but you can hear me talk about this all the time with like Cardone Capital. Let's use that as an example. There was 2 commercial units in my county, which is very small in South Florida, and he bought them for over the market value, and he's getting killed right now. He's claiming, I've seen you claim that you got about 85% in April in rents collected. He's saying is at 92%. I think that's a crazy big number. But I mean, how are you more protected than the average syndicator in a situation like this when people are stopping paying?
Yeah, so we've collected more in April. Like, we're recording this in April right now, right? So yeah. We collected more in April than we did in March. Okay. Usually we're in like a B-class workforce housing. He buys all luxury stuff. So I like that A-class, B-class areas, workforce housing. I don't do anything luxury. When the market's good, everybody can afford workforce. When the market shifts, all those luxury renters move into more of a workforce type housing stock. And I don't do anything in the hood, like C and D class kind of areas. Not anymore. I got started there, and I made a lot of money there, and that's how I got it was kind of a stepping stone to get into better stuff. So you gotta start somewhere, but I don't do that anymore. So what I can tell you is that it's just a different model, right? It's a different business model. And so in my, like where I buy and stuff, we typically collect about 85% of the rents by the 5th of the month. And then the rest of it trails in over the next 5 to 10 days. Late fees are paid. We collect everything. And we typically have about 1% of an eviction rate. So it's, that's our typical business model. As far as like, how are we more protected? Like, I only need to maintain a 70% occupancy in order to cover all my operating expenses and all my debt service. So my break evens is somewhere, depending on the deal, it's somewhere between 60 to 70% occupancy. And so that's a pretty insulated place to be, right? Cardone, he's just in a different, he does traditional syndication, but he takes fees. If you ever read any of his docs, he takes acquisition fees. He takes asset management fees. He takes fundraising fees. He takes fund management fees. He takes capital events fees. He takes all these different fees. So it's kind of like boiler room. He's like, oh yeah, well, they're getting rich on paper. He goes, I'm taking home cold hard cash, right? Via commissions. And so he might have, I don't know what his equity splits are or anything like that, but he might have 30 or 40% equity ownership. But that stuff's easy to raise money on, dude. It's sexy. It's nice. There's palm trees everywhere. It's exotic and luxury. And it's really easy to get people to invest in that front of the brochure stuff. Front of the brochure stuff does not make any money though. especially when you're paying $11 million for a $10 million building, right? So it's all based on speculation. Will the market keep on going up? Who knows? He's projecting that it does. And if it does, that's phenomenal. And everybody's going to make some pretty good money. But when something like this happens, or anything, and the wind just blows in a different direction, all of a sudden, you know what happens? Occupancy drops, or interest rates go up, and then you can't refinance, and then you can't sell, and then you can't cash flow, and then you can't pay your investors for 3 months, right? And then you got to fire half your employees, and you go down this road where all of a sudden that doesn't make sense, right? But does he care? He doesn't. Like, if you're in that position where you're buying a stabilized asset right out of the gate, you have a non-recourse loan initially. So it's not his money. He's got a non-recourse loan in place, so he's not personally liable on this if it defaults. Their only recourse against the loan is taking the property back itself, or he would have to do something fraudulent where then they could come after him personally. But I'm sure he's got attorneys that take care of all that kind of stuff. It's really the only people left holding the bag there are the investors, and they lose everything. The property goes back to the bank, and then the bank sells it for 80 cents on the dollar to guys like me. And I come in and I buy it at a low enough basis where now I don't have to rent it out at a luxury rent of $3,000 a month. I could rent for $1,800 and the numbers still work for me.
Okay. And so have you done what the REITs have been doing? Have you cut off payments to investors?
No. We're still making our payments. We made all of our payments in April. And we do quarterly distributions though. So we made all of our payments in January, made all of our payments in April. We'll make all of our payments in July. Again, like we have enough, we're at a low enough basis in all of our properties where they cash flow enough where we can make all of our payments. It's not an issue whatsoever. So yeah, we're still rocking and rolling. We're still refinancing things. I just bought an apartment building last week, actually, 200 units in Alabama. And we're still moving forward, man. Like, our business model makes sense whether the economy's up or the economy's down. So, it might not be the sexy stuff that's the luxury stuff that you see in downtown areas and A-class, first tier type markets. We buy in mostly secondary type markets, but it's predictable. It's expected what's going to happen. We know exactly how to play those cards, and it's easy, and it's like our bread and butter, man. It's almost boring for us because we're so used to it, and it's we've done it so many times, so it's easy.
The reason I asked you that is I was just wondering, are you using that as a huge point to private money guys, saying, hey, look, this guy, he's not paying you, they're not paying you, I pay you? Are you using that as a course of just marketing to private money?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely talking about it. I'm not throwing people under the bus necessarily, but like, we've had multiple investors saying, hey, thank you for paying. This is amazing. Guess how many of my other projects paid? None, right? Like, so they're like, we're going to double down as soon as we get cash out of those. We're putting more money with you, and so it really has resonated with our existing investors, and we're starting to get some conversations going with other people as well. So yeah, we're having some good conversations, man. I mean, I think it's gotten easier and harder to raise money with everything that's going on. There's a lot of people who are like, I think you just need to understand how to navigate the situation, navigate conversations, and educate people about how you mitigate risk. And that, even in 2009 to 2012, I've never met anybody who wishes they bought less properties, right? Yeah. I've never met anybody who wishes they did less deals in that time frame. And that's where we're going. And so, I mean, you can be a thermostat or you can be a thermometer. You can set the temperature, you can do the influencing, you can indicate where things are going in your conversations, or you could be a thermometer. A thermometer takes the temperature. A thermometer gets influence. A thermometer reacts to what's already happened in the environment. And so be a thermostat, right? Like, educate your private money investors and let them know about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how they're going to be secure and safe. The returns are solid, and despite what's being said on CNN and in all the different news channels, you've mitigated risk and have a good business model. It's not difficult. So yeah, man, it's again, it's easier and harder right now, just based on what's going on. But that means there's more opportunity.
Definitely. From what I understand of commercial real estate, which is very little compared to my residential wholesaling, It seems like I've talked to people on this podcast before. They have like 100 million assets under management. They do the traditional syndication. They tell me the only way to buy it is through a commercial broker, and you got to pay like 90% of retail. I mean, how are you getting wholesale prices on these units?
Off market, direct to seller. The same way that you find your deals, right? Like you're not going through real estate agents in order to go find some property on the MLS to then go and wholesale. Like you're finding off market, direct to seller, the same way that I found deals in the single family realm. It's how I find deals in the multifamily realm. And commercial brokers, what they're doing is they're going to shop it to earn both sides of the commission to the top 10 buyers in town, right? So they want to earn both sides of the commission. They know who's buying in this area. They're going to go push it out to a couple people. If it's a good deal, it's gone. It's never going to hit the market. So if you see something that actually hit the market, typically it's because a lot of people said no to it, or the top 10 buyers in town all said no to it. So you got to understand that and understand that you're not going to get really good deals unless you're one of the top 10 buyers. So in some markets I am, so I do get some deals through brokers, but majority of the stuff that we find is, polling lists, doing direct mail campaigns, doing outbound call campaigns, doing text message campaigns, buying from wholesalers and bird dogs who are finding off market direct to seller deals. And, a lot of social media, a lot of being on podcasts, a lot of stuff like that, where people are like, hey, found a good deal, but I need access to money, or can I wholesale it to you, or can we joint venture? And we do a lot of that kind of stuff. So we're always looking for deals. We're always looking for money. And it's, if you're always sourcing those two things, you could do deals regardless of what's going on in the economy.
So what is the number one way that you're finding these off-market deals then? Are you using traditional like direct mail or more of a referrals?
A little bit of everything. Like I do some education stuff. You've seen my social media post. Every time I post on social media, people are like, dude, can I sell you a building, buy a building from you, joint venture with you, lend you money, or pay you to coach me, kind of a thing. So we do all those things, and then we have, but we're always looking for deals. Like we have some different, sources on where we pull lists and stuff from. We do a lot of text message campaigns. To sellers all over the country, a lot in our backyard. We wholesale some smaller stuff, and then we buy and hold some of the bigger stuff. So we do a lot of that, and we like text messages. It's quick, it's easy, it's fast response, it's predictable, it's not very expensive. So we that's primarily what we do. But we call for rent by owner signs. We educate people on how to find off-market direct seller deals. And then we say, hey, if you don't have the balance sheet or the net worth and liquidity in order to qualify for a loan and the financing, reach out to us. We'll fund it. We'll buy it from you. We'll joint venture with you. We'll figure out a way to do something.
Okay. So if, let's say you find a killer deal and you got this guy who's motivated to sell this big multifamily unit, who's the guy talking to the seller initially, and who's the guy really closing the deal?
My acquisitions guy.
Okay.
So I have a director of acquisitions. He handles everything. All deals go through him. He underwrites everything. He makes offers on everything. He handles kind of transaction coordination on the front end. And then once we close on it, it gets handed off to the project manager. So our director of project management then steps in. He oversees all the renovations and all the value add improvements, along with our director of property management. So kind of like our asset manager. So the two of them kind of handle stabilizing the property. And then on the back end, we just, we turn around, we refinance it, and then we keep management in place. And sometimes, like up here in Cleveland, we have in-house property management. We own the management company. And then there's a lot of states that we invest in, like Oklahoma and Illinois and Louisiana and Texas, that we have third-party property management. So it just kind of depends on the market that we're in. And then we just kind of asset manage the management company once our investors are cashed out. So, yeah.
Definitely. So if you watch this podcast, I bring some killer guys on here, and they have one massive issue when they're scaling when it comes to things. So, I had Matt Larson on. He had 4,000 single family units, and the number one choke point in his business from scaling up is the management. And his management guy screwed him. I don't want to go into his whole story there, but how do you have a tight hold leash on your third party management guys?
Yeah, just like Larson's a good friend of mine, and he used third party management and wasn't paying attention as well as maybe he should have, or wasn't checking on some things, and things were going well, but then all of a sudden, they ripped them off. So we've been down that path too. I've gotten screwed by multiple management companies, where they burn me, they burn my clients. And it came to the point where we just had to build it out in-house. And so we built it out in-house. And when you go through that whole process, you really understand, the smoke and mirrors of management companies and how to make sure you're asking and interviewing and going through the right process of hiring the right management companies. They're like contractors, right? Like most of them are really, really bad. Most of them are fly by night. Most of them are complete jokes, and they're doing your accounting on, a back of a napkin kind of a thing. And they're not giving real reports. They don't have real experience. But then there's some that are just absolute rock stars. There's some that if you find a good one, like a good contractor, man, you got to hang on to them. You got to treat them really, really well. And even then though, you got to pay attention. You got to make sure that they know that you are paying attention. So, from our standpoint, like my COO, his job is to just make sure that everybody's doing. So he jumps on a phone call every Monday with our local joint venture partner, boots on the ground partner, and the local management company, and whoever our on-site managers are. So if we have a 100-unit apartment building, we have usually one on-site property manager and a couple of maintenance personnel. So he'll jump on a call every Monday, a 15-minute call for every single one of our properties, and just run through all the KPIs, all the metrics in order to measure performance and make sure that the needle's moving forward on everything. And if anything's not going smooth, then he'd call him back the next day or later on that afternoon, and then works through any sort of issues. But he's looking at reports on a weekly basis. He's looking at financials on a weekly basis, and he's having a conversation on a weekly basis. And so, it might not have to be you having those conversations, but somebody has to have those conversations with the management company. So that way they know that your eyes are looking at everything and making sure that, they're not taking advantage of the situation. Because if you're ignoring your property, why would they have to pay, right? Like, why not they? They could then ignore it. So you just have to make sure that, you're coming in there, you're asking questions, even if everything looks good, make sure that they know you're paying attention to it. Because if you're not paying attention to it, they're not going to pay attention to it. So you still have to have a layer of asset management in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree on that. Just the management side, it's the number one issue I do see with these guys trying to scale up here. But I wanted to ask you more of a fun question here. Every real estate guy has got one here. What is your craziest real estate story?
Oh man, I've had a bunch. One of the first buildings I purchased, a 31-unit apartment building, actually right up the road here. This was like the Santa Maria of my portfolio. This is like the crown jewel of I had all these dump buildings in dump areas. Not all these, but I had about, 75 units or 100 units maybe in the like C class, C minus areas, just in absolute hood, and or D class even, yeah. And so I bought this one in this solid B plus kind of a location, amazing 31-unit building, the biggest building I ever bought at the time. And I bought it from a nonprofit organization, and they had like a bunch of people in there who, were on subsidy rents or whatever, and just didn't care because they didn't really have like anybody that they had to pay money to on a monthly basis. They didn't have investors or anything like that. They essentially got it like gifted to them, and so they're running it with 65% occupancy, and economic occupancy is probably half of that. So I ended up buying the building from them for $500,000, 31 units in 2014, I want to say. And in 2004, like January 2014, I bought this. And so I buy the building, and I give notices to everybody that rent is due, new management company, here's the new ownership, here's where to send your rents. And all of a sudden, there's like some people in there who were in there for years that just didn't pay rent. And so the new guy comes in, they're like, who the hell is this guy? This is our building. This isn't his building, So they're like, get the hell out. Like, I'm not paying you rent. I don't pay rent. That's not what I do here, So I'm like, hey, I get it. No problem. But we're going to have to you're going to have to leave, right? You can't stay here. No, I'm not leaving. Okay, well, we post all the eviction notices, and a couple people end up, falling into place and actually paying rent. And then other people are like, no, and we had to kick a bunch of people out. Dude, within 45 days of me buying this place, there was one tenant who's like, oh yeah, F me, F you. And the guy goes through the process. We called the cops on him 7 times in 14 days.
Oh my God.
He stole a bunch of, like, all of our contractors are in there. So he steals a bunch of contractor supplies, call the cops. A couple days later, he brings in homeless people from the street and says that he owns the building and asks them to take doors off the hinges and carpet out of all the hallways. And so it's kind of funny actually looking back at it. Just not funny at the time.
That's not funny.
So tenants are like, what's going on? It's like middle of the night on a Saturday. Like, why are you taking carpet out of the hallways? I'm like, geez, call the cops. So this guy runs into his apartment, doesn't open up the door. The cops are like, we can't do anything. I was like, you kidding me? So then he gets in an altercation with another one of the tenants. Ends up, and allegedly the guy's got HIV and all this other stuff.
Oh.
Cuts himself and starts drawing witchcraft symbols on the doors of this other tenant. All right. So then we call the cops again. Cops come out, health and safety type thing. The dude doesn't answer his door. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? We've had to call the cops. I call you guys 3 times on this guy. You can't do anything more than if he doesn't just open up his door. Right. So then what else happened? He like broke a window, or like he got like high or something and was running down a street naked and racking people's doors in the middle of the night, got arrested. They let him out, right? This all happened within like 10 days. And then so then it came to the point where on a Friday afternoon, the guy ends up at like 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. The guy takes his cabinets off, rips them off the kitchen wall, puts them in his bathtub, sprays kerosene all over him, and just lights them on fire and goes and lays down in his bed, trying to kill himself or something. Dude, crazy. Thank God I had contractors who were still working there. They didn't leave yet for the day. They ended up evacuating the entire apartment building. They call the police or the fire department. Fire department comes on, knocks down the guy's door. He's all passed out from smoke inhalation. The fire spreads to like the attic, which is an open attic. So now it just tears off the roof, dude. Like an entire half of the building is just like devastated by smoke and fire. And then the fire department comes in, sprays down the whole place, and all the water goes from the 3rd floor into the entire 1st floor. Dude, it just devastated the entire building. This is the Santa Maria, man. This is my crown jewel. The whole thing burned down within 45 days of ownership. And then the insurance company that I had, an insurance agent, no longer my insurance agent, gets me an insurance policy that maxed out on a 100-year-old building. The code upgrade insurance maxed out at $10,000. So I don't have the right insurance policy, and he wrote it through an insurance company that had like a B rating, which is pretty much on the brink of bankruptcy. Just completely insolvent. They go bankrupt within 30 days after me filing the insurance claim. So I was supposed to get paid out like $3 million on this thing. I got a little over $1 million. It all went back into the building. But then we sold the building for $500,000. So I ended up breaking even on it just based on where we were on everything. It was just, dude, it was mayhem though, man.
Holy moly.
It was 2 years of just hell for us.
So would you say your number one lesson from that is just getting the right insurance policy?
Yeah, it's definitely one of them. Yeah. Getting the right insurance policy. Making sure you know what's in your insurance policy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, like, we were very reasonable, at least in my mind, with a tenant. Like, we were very cool. I was like, listen, man, I'll just pay you cash for keys. Just leave. We don't want you here. You don't want to be here. Just get out of the building. We're going through the eviction process. You don't want this on your record. You're not gonna be able to rent anything else. I mean, the guy had a felonious charge. He got charged when he was in the hospital the next day with a felony charge, and I went to jail because of it. So like, you can't, I don't know. You can't manage crazy necessarily, So you got to just do whatever you can, but you have these protections in place. We bought it at a wholesale price. We were increasing the value by putting the sweat equity in. We weren't speculating. We were buying for cash flow. We had insurance and some of these backstops in place. Unfortunately, leaned a little bit too heavily on the insurance agent, and you think they'd have your best interest in mind, and they just didn't. So we ended up, it was a long battle with the insurance company and everything in order to get it all paid out, but ended up settling and having to just kind of sell the building because we didn't have the cash in order to move forward. And that was one of the big stressors in that business partnership that went bad too. So it was just, one of those things, man. It is what it is. You learn your lesson and keep moving forward.
Wow. So do you drive by that property sometimes and just shake your head?
Yeah. I mean, I sold it to a lady who put a bunch of money into it. She had, big Northeast money. And so, it's probably it was just small units. They were all 1-bedrooms, apartment units. And she probably had to invest, she would have been all in for around 1.5, 1.6 million. So she would have been $50,000 a unit. What can you get in rent? Yeah, it could have made sense. It could have been a good deal if I would have just, try to find financing on it and bring in an investor, different investor or something. But it was just one of those, it was the last building that we could sell with that bad partnership. It was kind of like, I needed to wipe my hands of that. But at the time, I also thought like, $50,000 a unit for a 1-bedroom in this location. I bought the building for $16 grand a unit. And it was already, 60%, 65% occupied. And so like, this wasn't an area where you invest $50,000 a unit 3-4 years ago. And so, to me, it just didn't make sense to put $50,000 a unit into the building in order to make it make sense. But she got a good deal on it. It's a great building, numbers work, it makes a lot of sense, and wish her the best. But yeah, man, I go by it. I'm like, what a story that was.
That's crazy. That's insane. So to wrap this up, I got some questions right now for you. So, I mean, what's your 1, 5, and 10-year plan for you and your business?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people did their annual goals around New Year's, right? And you can just freaking burn those, light those on fire, because none of it is still pertinent based on what happened in March with COVID-19. So I'm actually taking the next 2 weeks to just kind of redo my goals and try to clean some stuff up. Really, my goals for the next 6 months are just totally get every deal that I had in the pipeline to the finish line, meaning get it fully occupied, get it fully renovated, fully occupied, and either refinanced or sold, depending on whatever the exit strategy was. And so we're cleaning up a lot of stuff. Like our rents are good. Our only place where we really got jammed up was like some construction loans. We had some land that we were going to build some townhouses and some apartments on down in the Southeast. And it's just construction loans just are much more difficult to come by right now. So we're thinking about either selling that land or just bringing in private money and funding the entire thing. And so I'm trying to just clean up some of that stuff. We had a couple of investors that backed out of some deals that I'm buying over the next 60 days here. And so we had to re-raise on some of those things, and just, being super proactive on the management side to make sure that we are collecting all the rents and having conversations with the tenants, doing workout plans and all that, just paying a little bit more attention now, to the operations versus the acquisition side. So that's really the 6-month goals. I want to get everything totally 100% good to go, because we've been buying buildings, the whole time. And some of them are, new construction. They're totally vacant right now. And we'll get them leased out as soon as they get totally built up. There's other ones we bought that were, 50, 60% occupied, that we still have to turn out a lot of the tenants who aren't paying rent. We have to renovate those buildings. We're going through that whole process. And so there's a lot of that that's still in my portfolio. Every building kind of stands on its own. We have an interest reserve, and we have plenty of money in place, and we underwrote it the right way, where I'm not concerned about any of them. I want to make sure that they all get to the finish line, because financing is a lot harder to come by right now. And I want to set myself up to capitalize on all these people who cannot pay their bills and cannot pay their mortgages and cannot pay their investors. All those people who are giving those properties back, I want to be the one who comes in and buys all of them, because I have a dialed in 4,000 unit portfolio that's cash flowing like a freaking beast, sitting on 8 figures of cash personally, plus my business partners all sitting on multiple 7, if not 8 figures as well. And just being ready to take down everything in next year. So that's the 1-year goal. 5-year goals, just buy everything. Again, this is 2000 going into 2008, 2009 right now. I see that a lot of the same opportunities. Now, will it be that bad? Will it be better? Will it be worse? I don't know. But I'm going to be poised to capitalize on all that stuff. And the reality is, I'm not going to try to time the market. If I come across a good deal, I'm going to buy it. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I think that's a scarcity mindset. I think there's an abundance of money out there. I think there's an abundance of opportunity out there. If I see a good deal, I'm going to buy it. Now, I'm buying it at a lower basis now. I might be at 50 cents on the dollar instead of 65. I'm buying things that are a little bit more occupied versus heavier value add projects. So that box has changed a little bit. But man, I'm ready to buy. So I'm going to work my ass off for the next 5 years and, get myself up to, I think we can get to several $1 billion in portfolio value. I think we'll get to $1 billion by the end of next year. And I think we'll get to, I don't know, probably 3 billion, maybe more, in the next 5 years. So it's kind of like that goal. And then I got some pet projects, some other stuff that are more, kind of passion type projects than they are more about building wealth. I'm big into kids education and setting kids up and get them entrepreneurial mindsets and attitudes. So I'm working on some education stuff on that front, achievement type oriented stuff. So I'm pretty pumped about that. I got some books coming out over the next couple. You said this will play sometime in May, so actually they might be out in May. So keep an eye out for those. And then I don't know. We'll see where it goes from there, man. I like the multifamily side, but like 10 years it's one of those things where like I want to plan out my entire life, but dude, things change so dramatically in just 12 to 24 months that every time I set long-term goals, I'm like, I got to burn them or I got to change them or I got to do whatever. So it's really hard to set 10-year goals. I think a lot of people overestimate what they can accomplish in maybe 12 months, but they grossly underestimate what they can do in 3, 4, 5 years. And so things, I mean, dude, my current portfolio, I got out of that relationship with those bad partners back in 2015-ish, end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Dude, in the past less than 5 years, I built a portfolio of 4,000 units, So I don't know where I'm going to be 5 years from now. It's kind of hard. Yeah. I kind of have the destination set on the GPS, and that's the direction I'm going in, but who knows, man? Like there could be massive other opportunities that come up that I decide to move on that instead. I might decide to take 3 years off and just kind of hang out with my kids. I might decide to do 1,000 other different things and go, surf in Mexico for a year. I don't know. Just kind of depends. We'll see. We'll see kind of the way the wind blows and the way the tide rolls, and we'll figure it out from there.
Wow. So how can people get a hold of you? I know you have Legacy Wealth Holdings. So how do people get in contact with you? All your socials are going to be below this video right now.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. Yeah, I mean, I put out a lot of free content on, social media and Facebook. I'm really active on, and then we kind of redistribute that Facebook content onto Instagram. So connect with me there, connect with me on LinkedIn. But I'm most active on Facebook. So definitely hit me up on there. And then, my website's legacywealthholdings.com. And I have a ton of free content and stuff on there too. And so we do some coaching as well. You can hit me up if you're, we do like quarterly training events on how to scale from residential into apartments. And they used to be live. We just did our first one virtual because of everything that's going on. So that's called Commercial Empire. And I kind of like doing the virtual ones. We got some really good feedback from it. I can do it at a lower price point because there's not as much overhead. People don't have to travel. So I think we're going to do a little bit more of that and get more people involved. I think wealth is like sunlight, man. There's an abundance of it. Like you getting sunlight doesn't take any sunlight away from me, Zach. So I'm able to give you sunlight, doesn't take anything away from me. And actually I'm not creating competition by educating people on how to do this. I'm creating collaboration. Like we can do deals together. Maybe you bring me a deal, I fund it, and all of a sudden we joint venture on a project. We're both able to build wealth. So I believe heavily in that type of mindset. And man, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that we can do together. I'd rather have, a quarter of a grape than 100% of a watermelon.
Yep.
I'm sorry, a quarter of a watermelon than 100% of a grape. Sorry, I'd rather have a quarter of a watermelon. There's a lot more juice in the squeeze of a quarter of a watermelon than there is in 100% of a grape. So I'm more of a collaborator, and I like to think I'm more abundance mindset. And so, I'm always looking to do deals. I'm always looking to buy deals. And so if anybody, has deals they want to sell or joint venture on or something, hit me up. Like if it meets our buying criteria, we'll take it down.
All right. And how old are your kids?
I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Wow.
So
So
yeah,
cool.
man, my daughter just turned 5, kind of crazy, but it's fun. It's a lot of work. It definitely makes you more focused though. I
Mhm.
used to just burn I was like, what the hell did I do with my time before I had kids? I don't even know. Um, I'm very diligently. I came into the office at 10 o'clock today. I'll leave by 4 o'clock today, be back. So I spend 6 hours, but it is like dialed in 6 hours,
Yeah.
4 days a week in my office. And then obviously I take some calls and stuff when I'm at home, but I try to spend 3 days at home with the family and really dedicate some quality time to them. Um, I try not to take calls, but if I need to, I will. If they're napping or something, I will. Or if they go to the grocery store or something, I will. I'm not perfect with it, but I think it's important to kind of differentiate and be in the zone when you're working and be in the zone when you're with your family.
Yeah.
I think you got to be present in both of those capacities. So when I'm at home, I'm trying not to take any calls, not take any text messages, not do anything like that, and just be present with the family and kids and wife. And when I'm at work, they respect me being at work, knowing that I need to be in the zone and on a podcast and sharing social media and having phone calls and doing work here. So, I think it's important, and just stay focused, man. I'm a bad multitasker. Like it's not good. So I need to, the more focused I am, the more I can accomplish.
Wow. So let me ask you the last question. I ask every single podcast guest this, and this is cool because you have some young kids and you're really into helping young kids become entrepreneurs. So I started out with $300 in my bank account, turned that over 6 figures in high school, wholesaling, things like that. But I mean, if you were 17 years old again in Cleveland, Ohio, and you had no money, what would you do to become the next Tim Bratz?
I would tell you that everybody focuses on resources. Don't focus on resources, focus on resourcefulness. Saying you don't have the time, you don't have the money, you don't have the knowledge, those are all resources. If you are resourceful, you can find any one of those resources. Resourcefulness is the ultimate resource. So be resourceful. Ask yourself good questions. Ask yourself progressive questions. How can I get the money? Where can I find the information? Who can I connect with? Like, asking yourself questions leads to answers, right? Ask yourself questions leads to better questions, which leads to better answers. And so don't listen to the voice where it says, I can't do something. That shuts off your creative juices. Ask yourself questions that opens up the creative juices in your mind to start flowing, and you'll go out and find it. If you're resourceful, you will naturally attract people who want to be around resourceful people, right? Like, you're hanging out. The reason I'm willing to come on this is because, dude, you're an ace. You're willing to go out and do the work, and you're creatively thinking about things. You're asking good questions. You're not saying, woe is me, and here's how bad the economy is, and nobody's paying their rents and all this. Like, dude, you're going out there and you're figuring it out. And so if that's the kind of attitude that you take, then you're going to be successful. You can find all the different resources. So be resourceful in finding deals, be resourceful in finding money, and be resourceful in your operations. Those 3 things specifically for real estate is all that matters. If you're good at deals, money, and operations, you're going to be just fine. You can do deals in a good market or a bad market.
Wow. I really appreciate that. I mean, guys, Tim Bratz is a bad man. You do not want to get in his way. So I really appreciate you coming on. I can't wait to see and have you on the next year or two and to see where you are in your growth. There could be another coronavirus. We don't know, but I really appreciate you coming on today, sharing your wealth and knowledge with us. I mean, is there any parting thoughts you have for the audience?
Man, I think especially in these times, you just double down on your work ethic. I don't think anybody can predict where things are going. I think you just double down on your work ethic, and you double down on doing the best thing of the information that you have right now, and just keep moving forward. Like, everybody made it through 2008, 2009, 2010, right? Everybody made it through the Great Recession and the Great Depression and the 1990s recession and the 1970s. Like, we all made it through all that stuff. So humans are resilient. When our back's against the wall and we're forced to either succeed or die, we tend to succeed. So don't sweat it out. You're going to make it through it. Just double down on your work ethic. Just keep working hard, pushing forward. I promise you that if you set yourself up, like, the opportunity is coming, right? Success happens when preparation meets opportunity, and you got to be prepared. So go get the insight, go get the knowledge, go get the experience, go build the teams, go build the influences and the network and the people and the mentors and all that kind of stuff, and set yourself up for success. So Yeah, man, appreciate you. Appreciate all the content that you put out there and all the value that you provide. So thanks again for having me. I'm excited to have me on. Yeah, let's do this again in the future.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys next week on the next show. Bye.